Hey everyone, and welcome to Class Notes episode number 40. Right, so this week we had regular classes twice and another play date applications class on Wednesdays. And basically after practicing our regular warm-ups and increasing again the volume in our hip mobility session. Again, when you missed those exercises, I think they are in episode number 38. You go back and can see them. We then went on to practice our circle walking. And again, we put our focus on the idea of qi yao ping, which means that the breath has to be even. But before we actually talk about how to maybe manipulate your breath to become even, the first task for us over the past 2 weeks is that we simply become aware of our breathing mechanics while walking the circle and performing our palm changes. So usually you could find differences in tension within your body, tension in your breathing patterns, and this will be a cue for you to either change your movement, to either change your breath, or to, well, simply harmonize both the breath and the movement pattern so they become more fluid and more, and you will be able to perform them with more confidence. So simply becoming aware of the breath was our first and primary goal of this week's circle walking exercise. We then introduced more of our second line Tian forms. After already practicing the first two movement patterns, we again reviewed those, like Zhang here. This is where we've spent the past 2 to 3 weeks on. Nice pattern here. And we then continued with the practice of movement number 2 and 3 of the second Tian line, which is and was new to most of the students in class. So here it was basically about learning the new patterns. 2.3 is a very long motion where you step behind your front foot and then open up your whole body again. Very nice and long patterns, so you go for a long distance. Try to go as long as possible when you perform this in regular speed. So this is just the movement demonstration. So 2.3 and 2.4, also very particular move, challenging your mobility quite a bit with a pong start, uplifting and then squatting down to strike into a diagonal angle to 45 degrees with your wrist. Okay, these are the new patterns we learned this week. 2.4 and 2.1 Tian line 2 line 2 movements number 1 to 4. So that was the first part after we practiced the circle walking. We then went into the practice of the Tian lines. We then reviewed the applications or some applications of 2.2. I filmed them before, but here I filmed them again this week. The basic entry here for the second movement in line 2 is that you step in with a P-Tran-like entry. You then change the grip to underneath your partner's arm and pull the arm on top of your shoulder before you strike towards the lower ribs with your second hand here in order to break the structure. And from there you can basically continue with whatever you can imagine. So we practiced 3 different methods on how to continue from here after breaking the structure. and already filmed this last week again, but important here, the most important part for us here is the very first entry, where you break the structure, and also where you put the arm of your partner on top of your own shoulder, and from there you have multiple ways to finish with a takedown, for example. So the first one being this very classic application where you put your hand around the face of your partner while simultaneously pulling the arm in with your secondary hand here. So you pull back on the elbow, and then on the other side you grab the face and turn the face around. Then, super important, don't just turn the face and hope your partner will fall, but you need to make space with this foot here. So step back, create the space for your partner to fall, and then turn. A very important thing here in this takedown, and in basically most of the takedowns that you lead with your hand, is that your fingers need to point downwards, just as your intent. Otherwise your partner won't fall. So a classic mistake in this application here is that people start to turn the face, but then just stay on the horizontal with their fingers instead of pointing down where they actually want their partner to fall. It sounds so obvious, but in fact it's not. And I've seen it many times that people get stuck there because they don't turn their fingers into the right direction. You can then add the foot sweep, of course, if you like. If you try this at home, this application here, beware that the angle of your own and the positioning of your own body in comparison to your partner's body is essential here. You need enough space for the hand to come in, you need the proper angle to kick the leg. Otherwise, I would prefer a different application. Okay, so give it a try, and you will find out quite soon that this application really needs the perfect angle and the perfect distance to your partner. You see it in a lot of Chinese martial arts, this takedown, classic. But then when you watch closely, you will notice that the angle most of the time is just not right. And you will just notice this if you've practiced that by yourself. So it's interesting to practice, and yeah, just give it a try. And not only in the cooperative fashion that we filmed here, but also with a little bit of resistance. So you will learn how it feels when your partner actually resists your push and also resists the takedown, right? But first start with your partner just being your dummy, so you can at least figure out the motion, how it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to feel, and then you add the pressure, or you have your partner add some resistance to your own takedown attempt. The second combination here is the same entry, connected to Gai Zhang of line 1. This one I prefer over every other application because it's so simple. Basically just lifting your hand and blocking the knee on the other side and leaning forward, and then the follow up with the knee on belly like position, also very important here, that you stay loose enough to be actually able to step forward and move into a control position from where you can then continue. Okay, so this is the connection of line 2.2 with Gai Zhang of line 1. The third application we've practiced is something that looks like an arm triangle, but it's not. So when you move in, you strike towards the ribs, everything stays the same, but then you connect your hands. And here, in comparison to the arm triangle that you know maybe from a grappling art like Jiu-Jitsu, you notice that my arm isn't, or I do not use my arm here in order to choke my partner, but I use this part of the wrist here, the bony part of my wrist, in order to press against the neck of my partner. And this again will have influence on the structure of his upper body, the alignment of his spine, which then makes it easy for me to step back, create space for him to fall, and take my partner down. Okay, so this is something that people need to see. The difference here is I am not attempting to choke my partner in this position, but I am lifting his arm, and now I'm closing my hands with the sharp part of my wrist here, and I put it just against his neck on the muscle, and then I basically grind the muscle down, and this will make his structure break. Okay, so close up here, so, and then grind down. That's how it works. Okay, so this is applications for Bagua Zhang Tian line 2, movement number 2. There are many more ways to connect from there and to take your partner down, for example, or to start striking. We will talk about some more applications, I think, next week, or maybe over the next 2 weeks, before we get into the applications of movement number 3 and number 4 of line 2. So if you're interested, stay tuned for that. So we then had our applications class here in our small room in the back of the dojo. But before we take a look at that, it makes sense to remind us of something that I think everyone needs to practice in the beginning of their martial arts career, and this is on the idea of how to align your body towards gravity, a concept heavily influenced by Tim Cartmel. And since I studied with him, I teach this in literally all my basic classes. It doesn't matter if it's Tai Chi Chuan, Xing Yi Chuan, or Bagua Zhang. It's always there. Okay, first you need to learn a neutral stance, where you basically align yourself towards gravity. So you have a hip wide stance, you have an elongated spine, you have relaxed shoulders, and you have the idea of expansion of your whole body into space. And basically what you do is you're aligning yourself towards gravity. So the pull of gravity is always present, right? And it goes down through your body, and you need to align your body in the most efficient way. So there is no extra strain on any part of your body, being it your lower back or your neck. So the basic exercise here is to find, like I said, a neutral stance where you're aligned towards gravity. And this is a stance we commonly refer to as Wuji stance, which you use before practicing Qigong, or you use when you practice Qigong. Very important here. Then here comes the next part, where you have your weight sink into your legs. You try to release the tension. You also want to bend your knees slightly, and this will give you also a kind of shock absorbing capacity, right? So this is usually what we do before we start the practice of Qigong. But then here's the thing that's very important, which needs to come next when you talk about martial applications. Then obviously there is not only the force of gravity, but of course there's someone standing in front of you making contact, and then you need to change a little bit of that neutral stance. So it's not really a neutral stance anymore. In this video I call it the ready stance. It's something that you see in all sports. Tennis player waiting for the serve, basketball player getting ready for his defense when the other team is moving towards him. And basically when you orient towards an opponent, you also need to shift your weight a little bit towards the balls of your feet, instead of staying in the center at the Yongquan point, which is favorable if you are only aligning towards gravity. But if you have to practice with or fight against someone, you need a gentle forward intent, and your weight needs to shift to the balls of the feet. Okay, and if you have your hands out in front of you and you shifted your weight properly, a person standing in front of you should be able to push into your arms here, and the force should travel through your arms and your shoulders into your hips and into your feet without pushing you to the back. If the person presses harder, then you need to bend your knees more and move your hips to the back so that the front of your shoulders and the front of your knees, they stay in one straight line. Okay, so this is basic alignment. And literally the foundation of everything we practice in partner application. If you get this alignment ideas wrong, then, well, it's basically a waste. Okay, so in our freshly or our new applications class, we then practice this basic alignment just with a partner standing in front of us, and basically we're holding hands. Okay, I called this the play date, right? Because at this stage of the practice, it's just that, it's a play date. It's not a self-defense class or a fight club. It's we play with partner. Okay, so I can see the comments flowing in saying this is not for the street. Yes, it's not, but it's a play date. Okay, it's fun and we're getting there. Just be patient. So play date means that we're now practicing with the ideas of our own alignment and how to break the partner's alignment. We make it playful, and we put our hands just like so, and then we try to push or avoid the push from our partner. We try to find our own alignment and own stability and balance, and at the same time we also try to understand how our partner is aligning himself or herself, and immediately after the idea of this getting a feel for your own alignment and your partner's alignment, we then already started to play with intent. Okay, it's an internal martial art, and for me the idea of intent has to be present right from the beginning. So here's a nice thing that you can do in this push hands like scenario. You're standing in a hip wide stance, so you have the worst stance that you could imagine. You're putting your hands on the hands of your partner, and then you start to push and play. And what's super interesting for me is always at the beginning to understand what's behind the idea of the intent, is that you play with different directions of your intent. So the first idea would be you have no intent whatsoever, so you just play around and see how your body moves and see how your partner's body moves. Okay, so this is interesting in its own right, and it's usually a nice warm-up for your joints before you start to use more resistance. Then you can add different methods or different directions of your intent. So the first obviously would be to put your intent forward into the body of your partner. And as soon as you do that, you will notice that there is quite some tension now in the game. And basically two people are moving their intent forward, and they're kind of like two bulls fighting. Okay, they just like go forward and they just go. So it feels very natural for fighting. It's like, yes, I'm here and I'm pushing into you. But it's just one way how you could use your intent in fighting. The intent is very strong in the sense that when you put your forward, your intent forward, your whole body will create a pre-tension in order to move forward. Even if it didn't move yet, the whole tension in your body creates the perfect environment to then shoot forward if you let the body do this. If you put your intent to the back, like I would imagine that I am looking now out of the window behind me, then your whole body will create a tension which will make you, which will set you up for moving back. And the second exercise that we usually do is, instead of putting your intent forward, we then have the people put the intent backwards. Both people are doing that, and it's the weirdest practice that you can do, because it just feels so wrong if your intent is moving into the other direction, to the back, but you have your partner pushing from the front. And this is obviously it's not something that you would do on purpose if you are practicing with a partner, but it happens because we all know that, maybe not we all know, but many of us already know that when you are confronted with an opponent and you are not ready for it, that people tend to neglect the situation, or to tell them that no, it's not true, he doesn't want to attack me, it's not true, it's not true. And in this sense, or in this situation where they do not accept the fact that somebody is going to attack them, their mind plays a trick that they want it so much to be out of the situation that it feels just like as if you were thinking backwards. And now with this exercise, when you put your intent to the back intentionally, you get this weird sensation of, wow, I am really in the wrong place. I'm really in the wrong place here. There's someone pushing from the front, but my intent is in the back. I am kind of leaving, but I have to stay. And this physical sensation is very interesting to create in a practice room. And so you might notice it when you are confronted with someone who is basically aggressive towards you. But your mind is telling you to leave and you're still standing. Okay, so interesting thing here. It's another part of this warm-up part of this class here. And then the third way with playing with your intent would be the not focusing on one direction, to the front or to the back, but focusing on winning the game. Okay, this is also very interesting. So in this case, you can play with your intent, you can put it forward, you can also move it back if necessary to avoid the pressure from your partner, but your only goal is to win the game. And this is also something that is interesting because, well, then you feel different energies from different people, and also you get a sense for your own patterns inside your body, how you create tension, and which of that is maybe not very helpful at all, and what is helpful also on the other side. We usually start this practice standing in a hip-wide stance. So basically in the worst position you could have, standing in front of your opponent with just a hip-wide stance, because that's the easiest place where they can push you over. So it's a very nice start for these warm-up practices. The next thing would be that you change stances. So classic gongbu here, right foot in front, left behind, and both people are playing in the same position. So it just changes the rules of the game. And also what I highly suggest, instead of just playing it mindlessly, try to understand what this different stance is now asking of you, because now your opponent stays or stands in a much wider stance here, but the angle you need to push into is very different from the hip-wide stance when both people are facing each other, right? So right now, if this person here wants to push this person over out of balance, there is basically only one direction where this can happen. Because when you look at the feet, these are kind of these are the posts of a person, right? So he has one post and here another post, and she also has two posts here. And posts are necessary in order to avoid the fall, right? So whenever someone pushes into you, you take a step, and this step then creates a post which defends your which saves your body from falling down, right? And for example here, if we have this stance, there's basically only this point here where she can push him over successfully. She could also pull towards the front to this area here, but she has her own weight she has her own leg in the way. So it's not very easy to pull the partner into this direction, but it's still the easiest way to push this guy over would be to push in between the legs and behind his body. Of course, you need to then arrange your hands and cheat your partner or your opponent into a tension that will help you then deflect the tension and put it into the right direction. We will talk about that when I have a better video. This is just not good to explain it. But here is the next challenge. So it's a gongbu stance, and you have the same assignment to win the game, to push your partner out of balance. And we then added the next layer, which would be that both people are allowed to change stances, even into stances that don't make much sense, and then both people have to adjust to the new situation and try to find a solution to push the partner out of balance. And this is very, even if it's now with a little bit more resistance and everyone tries to win the game, it's still very cooperative in the way that there is no chaotic changes in stepping. It's still fixed step practice, but now with stances that don't really make much sense, or sometimes they make a lot of sense, and then again the goal is just to find balance and to break the structure of your partner. Now, next step of this play date was that we worked again with the idea of how to break your partner's structure. And as I mentioned before, let me see if I can get back to that. Breaking the structure of your opponent usually happens easily if you are able to pull or push or move your partner in one direction in space and then add a second direction, or if you can, a third direction. So when you take a look at your spine, you could flex the spine of your partner by pulling him in, then adding rotation through a pull with one hand and a push from the other hand. This is like a classic judo throw scenario. Okay, so we then practice a little bit of deflecting, moving the hips out of the way, protecting the head from strikes, and then we went back to the idea that someone's attacking us from the front. The goal was to protect the head, then move down into a control position, and then basically just take the partner down as quickly as possible without much technique, right? So just deflecting something that's coming in, protecting yourself, but then changing immediately into a position where you have the initiative, and then you try to break the structure of your partner and break him down. So here we are practicing with 3 people and 1 person in the middle. The idea here is not to fight against multiple opponents. This is for later, but here we are just putting a little bit more pressure on the person who is practicing, so he needs to find the solution a little quicker than when he's just practicing with 1 person, where he always has to wait for the person to get up again, right? So here it's like, okay, I need to take care of this one, then I see here's the next, exactly. And this is what shall happen. So there's you make the wrong decision in where to turn, and out of a sudden you have 1 partner in front and 1 in the back, and there you know, so, oh shit, in reality I would be, well, not so, it wouldn't be so great. Okay, so we also practice in this tiny room here, which is creating some extra stimulus. I think it's quite cool actually to have a little bit of a space problem, so you need to make smarter decisions right from the start. Okay, so here we are all practicing the same thing. This was basically it for the first play date, from where we will continue over the next weeks. I will add those videos and all the explanations to our online courses, so people who take the online courses can then also see how they can build up a curriculum for their own partner practice. I won't necessarily share them in the class notes because they are just getting too long, and I'm actually sure not so many people can take 30 minutes of class notes with me every week. All right, so this was it. Class notes episode number 40. Maybe you got some ideas out of it. Let me know through the comments. I'm happy to answer your questions, and off to class notes episode number 41 next week. See you there.